GrayLine. My name is Kyle Weaver. I'm here with Jeff Hartsell from the Post and Courier. We're excited to be back. Not the week that we were expecting from the Citadel Bulldogs, but we're still going to talk and be positive and just kind of reminisce on the game that happened and what went wrong, and then look forward to a very winnable game with Western Carolina home at Johnson Hagood this week, and really what we can do right this week to turn around and finish the season strong. So let's just start off by reviewing the game, kind of getting your take on it, and just breaking it down.
Well, the first thing I would say is this is not your father's or your grandfather's VMI team. Their coach, Scott Wackenheim, has done a really good job in his first couple of seasons. I think they were 1-21. So he had a real building job on his hands, and he's done a really good job of recruiting. VMI has some dudes. They I counted on their 2 deep, 14 players 6'4" or taller.
Wow.
And so long and lean, and some guys they can put some muscle on. And they've also figured out a way to redshirt. They had 22 guys who have redshirted on the 2 deep. So that's traditionally been tougher at VMI because they don't have a graduate school, right, like the Citadel does.
Right.
So you can't do that 5th year off campus or anything like that. So they figured out a way to get guys to redshirt, and they've done a good job recruiting. And of course, Reese Udinsky, the quarterback, is the real deal. The Citadel has faced some very good quarterbacks this year, and he's right up there with them. He had a fantastic game against the Citadel, 25 of 35, I think, for 335 yards and some touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, I think. So the Citadel had a tough time guarding their receivers, especially Jacob Harris. He's a big 6'4" wide receiver, really a matchup nightmare for the Citadel secondary. So first of all, credit to VMI, and they wanted it more than the Citadel. They've lost 12 times in a row to the Citadel, and you know how that was when the Citadel was losing to Wofford all those years in a row. Finally, you just had enough. And I think that's where VMI was. They brought 500 cadets with them, and I think they did that for a reason. They knew that this was going to be a good chance for them to finally win this game, and they did win it for the first time since 2002. So all credit to VMI, their coach. They're 2-1 in the SoCon right now, and I think their coach is an early favorite to be coach of the year, along with Furman's coach.
Right.
So he's done a great job. He's actually an old option guy. He played tackle at Air Force during his career and coached at Rice with Ken Hatfield, who was also an option guy. But he's made the decision that the air raid is the way to go for VMI, so he hired an air raid assistant from Northern Arizona to install that offense, and they're really doing well.
Yeah, I was actually with, some of my old teammates last night, and we were kind of talking about our time when we played VMI, and, our first 2 years, they were, pretty down in the dumps, and that wasn't even when, we were that good. Mm-hmm. And as we got better, so did they, and they definitely became more and more of a threat each and every year, especially that passing game.
Right.
And when you look at historically where we as the Citadel struggle, I think when we were our best, that was when our secondary was the best, and when we've struggled, at least our secondary has struggled. So I think that's something that 6'4" wide receivers have always given us trouble.
Well, they'll give anybody trouble.
Yeah. But us especially, because we're not having the 6-foot corners.
Right.
We're having the 5'8", 5'9".
Right.
D. Delaney was like our tallest one, and for a while, and he was probably 6 foot.
Yeah.
So you're looking at those LSUs or just the other schools. Maybe Sanford. They're going to get some 6-foot corners who can kind of match up with that a little bit better than we can. So, and that's tough. And
they also. VMI did a great job on defense. They played, and you could probably break this down in technical terms better than I can, but they played 5 down linemen the whole game against the Citadel, really stacked the box and forced the Bulldogs to pass the ball. 78 rushing yards, Kyle. That's not Citadel football at all. They threw the ball 34 times, and Brandon hit 19 of them, but that's not his game. That's not the Citadel's game. Raleigh Webb came open on a couple of post patterns that Brandon was not able to hit. He's much more comfortable throwing the ball over the top than trying to fit it in those windows on those crossing routes. So yeah, VMI forced the Citadel right out of their game plan, and that was the story of the game.
I want to know when the last time the Citadel has thrown the ball
2009 when Kevin Higgins was the coach.
And so who was our, did we have the NFL wide receiver?
I'm not sure. I think
it's around that time period.
Yeah, it was around that time period. I'm not sure when Andre graduated, but and that was the last time they'd run for that few yards. Was also in 2009 against Elon. So 78 yards and the triple option is not going to get it done.
Right, especially and talk about this week in and week out. When you run the triple, when you have those guys open and when you can get them to bite up, and take the few steps forward, you have to be able to hit the wide receiver.
Yeah, and he did hit Raleigh over the top. He hit Dante Smith over the top for a big gainer. But the problem came on post routes or crossing routes, slants. He missed a few open receivers, and that's a tougher throw than just throwing it over the top, So, again, that's credit to VMI. They forced the Citadel out of their game plan. The Citadel was without starting fullback Clay Harris, and Amika Nwanze, the backup, didn't play much at all. It was a true freshman, Logan Billings, who this time last year was playing linebacker in high school. He was the starting fullback, and I don't know if they trusted him. He ran 13 times for 51 yards, which isn't bad, but I don't think they trusted him to carry the ball 30 times, and that might have had something to do with the game plan. Plus, Brandon Rainey, despite what he might say, is not 100%, and that also affects the game plan, I think.
Yeah, especially, a team stacks the box as heavy as they did. That makes it tough, and maybe it was something that, we normally – haven't seen from them in the past, and you go through camp and every week or practice is typically a different defense, so you should have plenty of practice against every defense, but there is something to be said when you focus in on one defense all week long. The coaches come up with a game plan and strategies and all that.
One thing about an old option coach like VMI, he knows how to defend it.
Right.
And he said after the game, we were not going to let the fullback or the quarterback beat us. We were going to make them run the full extent of the option, and the Citadel just couldn't get it done. They lose to Silver Shako for the first time since 2002. So it is not in the offices at Signius Hall right now, where it's been for 17 years. So that'll be something to motivate the Bulldogs next year. But for this year, it's gone, and it's on to the next one. And this is a big game. If Citadel doesn't win this game, then the season's probably lost, and people start raising questions about the coach. And so this is a big game, and Brent Thompson admitted as much on Monday. It's a must-win game, and it's a game they should win, but they were 16-point favorites against VMI as well. So Western Carolina's quarterback, Tyree Adams, was suspended at the start of the season, but he's back, and he was the preseason Offensive Player of the Year in the SoCon. So he's just another in a long line of really good quarterbacks the Citadel will face this year. Western Carolina defense is not good at all. So you think, and this is the game last year when Brandon Rainey made his coming out, right? This was his first start, was against Western Carolina, and I can't remember what he ran for, but it was right at 200 yards. Brandon had 1 yard rushing against VMI. So he is not himself, and Brandon will never admit that or use it as an excuse. He always says, it's on me, I've got to get better. But he is not at 100% right now, in my humble opinion. And this would be a great week for an open date. Unfortunately, it's not here yet.
Yeah. Whenever we talk about this kind of every week now, I feel like, but whenever we had the early open week as a player, I was always like, man, I don't like that. But now that we finally have a later date, I'm kind of like, man, that would really not
well, it's
be
just
fun.
The circumstances of the season, the hurricane week, 4 overtimes in the heat at Sanford. There's just been no break for these kids, and of course, every team faces its challenges over the season. But this is just one that the Citadel's going to have to grind through and overcome. and find a way to beat Western Carolina because the schedule gets tougher
Right.
after Western.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into Western Carolina's quarterback. If I remember right, he is a dual threat, but he really beats teams on the ground. Is that kind of right, or has he developed more into a passing quarterback?
He's a dual threat and a good passing quarterback. Obviously, the preseason SoCon Player of the Year, he has the respect of the league coaches. I'm not sure how he ran afoul of the team rules early in the season, but he was suspended for their opener against North Carolina State, and he started 2 games now and played in 3. Western Carolina, what's their record here? I've got it somewhere.
I think I looked there 1-3 or 1-4.
Yeah, I had it somewhere.
So when I looked at that, I said that is a winnable game.
They're 1-4, 0-2 in the league, and they're coming off a 24-21 loss to Gardner-Webb, which is not a good loss at all. They gave up 60 points to Chattanooga, 41 to NC State, and 49 to Mercer. So the defense is really struggling. Their one win is over North Greenville, D2 team. So, Western Carolina is really struggling this year. So you would think this is a chance for the Citadel to get the option attack back on track. Will we see another quarterback get some action? I'm not sure. Brian Murdaugh has not played since that Charleston Southern game, and Evan Schickel, the true freshman, has not played at all this season. So maybe if the Citadel gets a lead on Western, we might see Evan Schickel. He's got 4 games to play with and still take a red shirt.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, who can we expect, with the season being the way it is, that maybe some freshmen that we should keep our eye on that potentially haven't played yet, but maybe we'll see them come in to play in a big game, in a close game where we might need a big play. Is there any freshmen that jump off the list and say that's somebody that coach might plug in?
No, they've been playing some true freshmen. We mentioned Logan Billings at fullback, and there's a couple of guys on defense that have been playing as well. But I think Evan Schickel is the most interesting possibility. They really like him from what I hear in practice. He was dinged up early in the season, and that's why that's one reason why Brian Murdaugh was the choice to replace Brandon Rainey in that Charleston Southern game. So it'll be interesting if we see Evan Schickel get on the field, but you need a lead first.
Yeah.
And so that's been hard for the Citadel to come by, and I'm not discounting Western at all. VMI came in as a big underdog and took it to the Bulldogs, and Western Carolina will see this as their big chance to win a SoCon game this season. So I'm sure they'll bring their best effort on Saturday.
So we've talked a lot about the triple option against VMI, as well as how Western doesn't have a great defense. So hopefully that will be able to get us on track. But let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. And so where did we see the struggles on the defensive side, and then what type of improvements or changes do you think we'll see made?
Well, I think I think the defense had been making weekly progress maybe up until this game. I'm not sure how much of a hangover there was from the 4 overtime game against Samford. Samford got drilled 58-14 by Furman last week. So you have to think there was a little hangover for both Samford and the Citadel after that 4 overtime game. But I think the VMI just came down to some mismatches in the secondary. 4th and 1, VMI had the ball near the Citadel goal line, and they threw a fade up to the 6'4" Jacob Harris against Lane Botkin, who's listed at 6 feet, but he's probably about 5'10" or so. And so Lane got caught a bit flat-footed on that one, so that was a touchdown for VMI. And then late in the game, after the Citadel had tried to come back, Citadel blew a coverage in the secondary, and that same receiver got loose for like a 61-yard touchdown that iced the game. So it's not a good game for the secondary. The Citadel was able to get some pressure on Jacob Harris. I think they had 3 sacks, but it wasn't enough, obviously.
Right.
And that kid has thrown 252 straight passes without an interception, which is a conference record. So, again, credit to him. He's really a heady player, 6'4", and a good passer. I'm not sure how he fell all the way to VMI in the recruiting battles. He's from Pennsylvania, cradle of quarterbacks, So he's a good one.
So we talk about turnovers, and we kind of saw that we threw some interceptions in this game as well. So what do we need to do to win the turnover battle moving forward?
The key turnover was the one on the Citadel's first drive. They blew right down the field for a touchdown, and things were looking really good. Stopped VMI, got the ball back. Logan Billings fumbled, the true freshman fullback. And when you play a true freshman at fullback,
it's kind of expected.
That's going to happen. Remember Tyler Renew early in his career had trouble holding onto the ball. So and VMI turned that turnover into a touchdown and scored 24 straight points after that. So that was a crucial play in the game. But really, the Citadel has done pretty well on turnovers, I think, this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that was a costly one.
Right. That's definitely good. Well, we're going to take a quick little break. When we return, we'll talk a little bit more about Citadel football and maybe some other sports that are going around Citadel, but we'll be right back. We just want to remind you that we are at Toast in Mount Pleasant. They have great happy hours from 4 to 7 every day of the week. They have $2 domestics, $5 appetizers, and some of those appetizers are definitely Charleston specials, so definitely come check that out. We also want to remind you of our other sponsor. Citadel GrayLine is delivered by IPS Packaging. For your packaging supplies and automation needs, call IPS Packaging and Automation at 1-800-277-7007. Or learn more, visit ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation is a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. So we're going to take a little quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Citadel GrayLine. Again, I'm Kyle Weaver. Was blessed to play some football for the Citadel back in 06, from 2012 to 2006, when we were lucky enough to win 2 Southern Conference championships. And we're just going to talk.
Never lost to VMI?
Never lost to VMI. Always had to. I just thought the Silver Shako just was like part of the office.
Yeah,
that's
like
what
lamp.
people from my time frame just thought. We just got accustomed to it. So, but I'm here with Jeff Hartsell, and we're just going to talk a little bit about some individual players. Then we're going to talk a little bit about SoCon basketball as their pre-poll came out, and then some just things that are happening around the Citadel and some things that Jeff is talking about in his paper article. So first of all, let's talk about some individual performances. We talked about how we threw the ball a lot. So with that,
yeah, Raleigh Webb is putting up some numbers that haven't been seen since Andre Roberts was roaming the field for the Bulldogs back in the day. He had 10 catches for 117 yards against VMI, and it could have been 13, 14, 15 catches if they were able to hit some of those where he came open. So he had a big game. I think it's the first back-to-back 100-yard games for a Citadel receiver since Andre Roberts was at the Citadel. And he's there's another stat, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, he's having a great season, and he's really, he's got to be getting on some radars for the NFL or other levels of pro football at probably close to 6'3", 212, runs about a 4.4 in the 40. So he's a beast of an athlete.
It's kind of like Noah Dawkins. Noah Dawkins has the 40. Mm-hmm. He's the fast sprinter. He's got the the size and the strength. So does Raleigh. Raleigh's going to be impressive in the weight room. He's going to run the fast 40.
He's going to have a good pro day, barring injury. So, yeah.
He's going to have a chance, that's for sure.
I think so. And you mentioned Noah Dawkins. We should mention that he was just signed by Tampa Bay in the NFL. He was on the Bengals practice squad, and Tampa Bay has signed him off the Bengals practice squad for their roster.
Wow.
So I don't know yet if that means he'll be on Tampa Bay's practice squad or if he'll be on the 53-man roster. But that we'll find out in the next few days.
For that, like if I'm on a contract with the Bengals, is it like I'm still a free agent week to week? Like if somebody wants to come pay me more, I can
It
jump,
must be they must be eligible to be signed by other teams unless he got waived by the Bengals and I didn't hear about it. That's always possible.
Okay. I did see that he was at one of our games, and I was kind of like wondering how that happened. But our games are on Saturdays. Practice might end on Friday for those guys.
Exactly. They don't travel to the games, I don't think, if they're on the road. So anyway, that's good news for Noah. I'm not sure if he got cut by the Bengals or if they just signed him straight off the practice squad. But he's getting his chance in the league. So and another guy that really had a great game against VMI is Willie Eubanks. And that guy has been balling out all season.
Heard his name a lot.
SoCon Defensive Player of the Month in September, even though he never was SoCon Player of the Week. He got SoCon Player of the Month, so they recognized his overall consistency. Yeah, and he had 12 tackles against VMI, 1.5 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hurry. So he really played well against VMI. He's played well all season long. So he's having a great year. As you mentioned, the Southern Conference basketball preseason poll came out on Monday. ETSU is the consensus pick to win the league, followed by UNC Greensboro, Furman, and Wofford. Those are pretty much the top four. Citadel was picked 9th in the league, just ahead of VMI. So Duger Bocham's got a bit of a rebuilding job this year, after losing Zane Najdawi, Matt Frierson, and Lou Stallworth off of last year's team. So he's got quite a rebuilding job. He does have a couple of grad student transfers coming in to help with that rebuilding. But it will be, they have a lot of freshmen on the team. So it's going to be one of those kind of years where we'll see how quickly the freshmen can develop. And someone from this junior class, Hayden Brown and those guys, has got to have a breakout season for the basketball team this year.
And we got to see how many freshmen that we can retain from this. I mean, we've had some good freshman classes in the past and then lose them. So we just have to get the freshmen in there, have a few of them play well, have the grads, the transfer students carry the team a little bit leadership-wise and here and there. And then let these freshmen
One interesting thing is the three-point line has been moved back this year, and I had forgotten about that until Coach Balcom reminded me a couple of days ago. It's back, I think, around 2 feet.
Wow.
So how will that affect the Citadel? They love to shoot the three. They're going to shoot it anyway, so I don't know if it'll affect them too much. But it might affect other teams a little bit more? Maybe they'll shoot fewer three-pointers. Will that help the Citadel? We'll find out. But, yeah, the three-point line has moved back this season.
That's definitely very interesting. And there's some other things that are going out around the Citadel and Citadel football and sports. So why don't you go ahead and refresh us on those?
Yeah, a couple of things coming up in the paper. I hooked up with former Citadel coach Jeff Bleemer. He was the offensive line coach back in the glory days under Charlie. Now we have two glory day periods at least. The Kyle Weaver era and the Charlie Taff era.
Coach Boyd era.
The Mike Houston / Brent Thompson years when they won the SoCon title. But Jeff was the offensive line coach back in the day when in 1992 when the Citadel won the SoCon and was ranked number 1 in the nation. Anyway, he's an assistant coach out at Cane Bay and is a member of a church out there. Jeff actually drives a bus around on Sunday mornings and picks up the kids in the area to go to church, some of them from poor communities, etc. Well, somebody stole the church's van. So a Citadel alum donated a new bus, and they got it fixed up, and Jeff is back out on the road taking his kids to church on Sunday. So I did a story on Jeff Bleemer and his van kids that will be in the paper probably tomorrow on Thursday. And then we have a story coming up. People might have wondered about the statue behind the end zone at Johnson Hagood Stadium of the 2 football players. We're going to have a story coming up that explains the history of that statue. It's 2 former Bulldogs that were killed in Vietnam in 1966, and some of the platoon members of one of those players are going to be there this week putting a wreath on the statue and recalling Skip Murphy, who died in Vietnam in 1966 and played football for the Citadel. So we'll have a story sort of about the history of that statue and what it means to the Citadel and to Citadel football.
If I'm not mistaken, earlier this year, before the season started, they actually got the Commandant to do a voiceover for a video that they put out about that statue, and it was a very powerful video.
I think they play it before every game,
okay,
and they're going to play it when the members of his platoon are there,
right,
to remember Skip Murphy. And they're also going to visit the Vietnam Memorial on campus. So it should be an emotional time for those guys. Skip Murphy died trying to save some other soldiers there in Vietnam. And so heroic tale there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's, one of the cool things about the Citadel is it's just not about football. It's just not all these other things. A lot of our football players and a lot of the football players that I played with, they're out serving our country, which you're not going to get at these other institutions. So it's really cool to be able to have these type of stories. Switching gears kind of completely, and something that I wanted to bring up earlier, it kind of slipped my mind, was somebody who's around Citadel, the program a good bit. What is the attitude like with the players, the coaches, and the alumni? Are you seeing that change? Are you seeing it stay upbeat and positive? I know you probably went to the Tuesday press conference. What are being said, and how are the body languages and
Well, I know it's been a tough season for them so far. They haven't quite met the expectations they had set for themselves. That Stanford game took a lot out of them, and then losing to VMI will also be an emotional blow. So we'll find out, just how tough mentally they are this week, and how much they can stay with the grind and put this game together against Western Carolina that their coach has called a must-win.
Yeah, a must-win. This early in the season, and already having 2 losses is in the SoCon is not great. So just during the break, we had a question. We'll go ahead and touch on that. As far as somebody asked, it seemed like when we were winning a lot that there was less injuries than now. And so me and you kind of talked about that a little bit. There was not a super amount of injuries even this year, but we just kind of explain it to the viewers as far as sometimes we have a great strength coach and Coach D, so that has to do with a lot of the prevention. So when the athletes are there all summer long, some of the pre-work that they're doing, as well as some of the drills that they're doing, during those workouts, are preventative for these things. We also have Andy Clausen, who's a Hall of Famer and been there since the Citadel probably opened. And then, but things that you can't control, even with two great, professionals like those, are you have some players who are just prone to cramps and to smaller injuries, as well as sometimes it's just how the ball rolls, which you can't really control.
Yeah, I mean, Clay Harris hurt his shoulder against Samford, and the fullback is going to take punishment. Right. Even when he doesn't have the ball, somebody's going to be hitting him. So fullback is definitely a tough position. And then punter Matt Campbell is out. He's missed 2 games with what they're calling a lower leg injury. Now, I don't know if he strained something kicking or got hurt some other way. I'm not sure what his injury was, but they miss him. But Gage Russell has done a really good job with those rugby-style punts. He pinned it down at the 1 against VMI. So I don't think they've missed Matt Campbell, but Gage Russell has done a good job.
And that's exciting to see because he's a guy who has been with the program for a while, a walk-on guy, a guy who is playing.
Prides himself on his holding, I think.
Yeah.
He wants to be the holder of the year.
Facebook, he put out a nice graphic there. So, one of those guys there, that seems like a fun group of guys. And
but I think the injury to Clay Harris does make a difference. Against Samford, the fullbacks carried the ball 50 times, and that was not going to happen against VMI with having to depend on true freshman Logan Billings. He carried the ball 13 times, so I think they were a little hesitant to depend that much on a true freshman to carry the ball that much. So I think the injury to Clay Harris did have an impact on the game plan.
Yeah. We're overall, this week, again, at Johnson Hagood, we hope to, see those, the Citadel go back to their roots.
It's Military Appreciation Day. They're going to have a flyover of Black Hawk helicopters, which should be cool. And we should mention the crowd last week, 12,000 plus for Parents' Day and the VMI. That was the biggest crowd since 2016. I think it'd be interesting to see how many of those people come back after watching them lose to VMI. But
congratulations to the class of 2020 getting their rings.
That's right.
That is a big deal, and very excited for those guys. And we talked about it last week, how those distractions play, and did that or did that not affect? I mean, it's really not an excuse, and I'm sure the coaches and players would not give that as an excuse. But again, that is something that most colleges don't have to deal with on a yearly basis that we do. And we know how to handle it by now, and these players have seen how their classes handle it. So no excuse there, but at the same time, it'll a distraction.
It'll boost the rivalry. It's not a rivalry unless the other team wins once in a while.
Yeah, I was talking to an alumni just passing by this week, and we talked about this is the game for VMI. They bring the 500 cadets, and they're ready. They go all out, and for us, it's like we have so many other rivals that we want to beat. It's us wanting to beat Wofford. Are we a rival to Wofford? I don't know. And then it's us wanting, us with Furman. We have a pretty good rivalry there. Us with CSU.
Right.
They've won some, we've won some. So we're kind of focused off on these other games.
Well, I think the Citadel needs to move VMI back up in the pecking order.
I have no doubt that after this year, at least everybody on that team until they leave the Citadel will not want to lose to VMI.
Coach Thompson
again.
pretty much said that on Monday. He said we haven't been thinking of VMI in the right way for a few years now, sort of taking that game for granted a little bit. So VMI will change that mindset going forward for sure.
And I think we play in a conference where anybody can beat anybody. We have. And that's just showing even the team at the bottom is going to contend for the top.
ETSU is in last place right now. They lost to Furman by a touchdown, I think, and Furman's in first place.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
and we're 4 or 5 plays out of first place and undefeated. So it's just one of those seasons. This was the first game where we said it was truly a loss. The other games,
I
play
think,
here, play there, would have really made
Yeah.
a difference. Still had a lot of work to do, but in this game, a play or two wouldn't have swung it as
Right.
enough.
Right.
So, but overall, we look forward to being back at Johnson Hagood next week. As far as our radio show, I will be out of town again. So our other co-host, Paul, will be stepping in, and he's going to do a great job, and hopefully we'll be talking about a Citadel win with Western Carolina. So we appreciate you guys joining us. We would love to have questions for next week's show. If you guys want to go ahead and send in some questions to our Facebook page, we'd love to get that. And then we hope to have some guests here in the near future, so we can kind of continue to share what's going on around the Citadel football program. So, Jeff, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We also want to thank John Raw for putting this on, and we'll see you guys next week. Go Dogs.